course, and today I'm representing 3 different organizations. It is something called ECSO. It's the European Council of Skeptical Organizations. It's an umbrella organization where you can't be member there as a person. You are the members of the ECSO are the other organizations in Europe. So we're trying to work as an umbrella organization to coordinate, or at least facilitate coordination between European skeptics in all countries, really. Then I am also from what's called VOF, which are the Swedish Skeptics, and I'm on the board there. And then I have a podcast. I have a podcast. Me and a friend called Andras, we have a podcast together, and that's the one there, the European Skeptics podcast. It's an English-speaking podcast that comes out every week, and I won't talk too much about that, but I wear the shirt, so you will remember anyway. So I'm here to talk to you about skepticism in the Nordic countries, but also a little bit in Europe, and then I will go into a couple of cases in Sweden, mostly because I know those best, and maybe, I think I picked out a few that I think you're interested in. And anytime you want to ask questions, fine with me. I mean, just raise your hand, and for the record, I will try to repeat the question into the microphone so that, or you have a flying microphone. Perfect. So, great. So let's dive into it. Let's start with the Nordic countries and in Norway. And unfortunately, I have a little bit bad news about Norway. They used to have a small but very active skeptic group called Skepsis. And lately they have, you know how it is with small organizations, somebody moves, somebody starts a family and moves to another place or gets another job. And at the moment it seems to be sort of on a hiatus. The last post from this website is from 2021. But I know a few names, and sometimes I do try to get in touch with them. But at the moment, it's not too much happening there. They used to have a podcast as well, called Saltklypa, which of course is it means a grain of salt, but in Norwegian. And since Swedish and Norwegian is very close language-wise, I used to listen to it with great, enjoyment, but unfortunately they are now also in hiatus. But let's hope that they're coming back again soon. They did invite James Randi many years ago, for instance. I believe you all know James Randi. I've heard of him. So they've done quite a few things in the past. Hopefully they will come back. Then we have Denmark. And it's funny how skeptics organize in different countries, in different cultures. There's different approaches in different countries. In Denmark, there's not one central organization. There is a network of about 20 to 30 very prominent skeptics, I would say, but they haven't formalized that into an organization per se. That they have an informal group and gather, exchange ideas. They do lectures, but it's a little bit 25 one-man shows in a way, but they're still keeping in contact. And I'm in contact with a couple of them as well. They're very good. They have a website. The last post there was from 2024, so some things happen sometimes. But they have, I can mention, I don't know if anybody listens to the ESP, the podcast I'm doing. We did an interview with 2 Danish guys 2 weeks ago. They are called Sten Svanholm and Klaus Larsen, and they may be the best experts on 9/11 legends or conspiracy theories in the world. Actually, they could be. I mean, there's no you don't have a formal competition, but they are really, really good. They have studied all of the the myths and the conspiracy theories and the claims that the conspiracy theorists are making in very great detail and debunked things. Or actually, they didn't set out to debunk things. They said, okay, let's look into these claims. Like, what shall I tell you? The steel doesn't melt at a certain temperature. Okay, let's look into what does that claim mean really? Well, does it have to melt for the building to fall down, etc.? I think, I hope that you here realize that there are a lot of conspiracy theories about 9/11 that are not true and they just don't make sense. But if you want to make sure to know exactly in what way they do not make sense, they have a great website. It's called 911facts.dk, and it's both in Danish and English. So I'm sure you can find, if you want to look up how to counter certain arguments from 9/11, that's a good resource to go to. So that's Denmark. Then we have Finland. They have an organization. They have a central organization, much like Sweden also have. I'll talk about Sweden in a minute. It's called Skeptiků. They have 2 prizes that they hand out every year. The Hoo-Ha prize for people who have done something or said something or promoted something really stupid, something really wrong, something that is a conspiracy theory or maybe fake medical claims, things like that. And then they have the Socrates Award for people, for somebody who's done something good, who has promoted something very something skeptical and try to educate the public in certain ways. They have also this a quarterly magazine called Skeptikų, which I can't read because it's in Finnish. And I don't have a personal connection to any Finnish skeptics at the moment. There were a couple of that I did correspond with for a while, but I guess maybe it's the language issue here. The Swedes, the Danes, and the Norwegians can all understand each other pretty easily. Well, the Danish is sometimes difficult, but we can talk to each other. And even though we all speak English, somehow the Finnish people tends to become a little bit left out. But there is skeptical. There are skeptical there are skeptics in all these 4 countries, and even though the Norwegians are currently a little bit quiet, they are still there, I'm sure, and there are names that I can contact if I need to ask something specifically. There are some very good blogs that I look at from time to time as well. So that's the Nordic situation, how it is. So unfortunately, I'm not talking about the Baltic states. We should include the Baltic states here as well, but maybe we'll do that over a beer later on, right? Sorry, that's not the Nordic state. I forgot the best part, the Swedish part. I was getting ahead of myself. So I was, for 5 years, I was president of VOF. That's the easiest way to pronounce it for you guys. It's Vetenskap och folkbildning is the full name of the Swedish Skeptics. It was founded in 1982, so we've been around for a long time. By the way, it says in some of the papers here that I am a co-founder. I was only a teenager at the time. That's not correct, but I have been on the board for more than a dozen years, and I was the president for 5 years. So I'm very much involved with the Swedish Skeptics. We have a website that is currently, it's getting to be in pretty good shape, actually. We have something we call Skeptical Monday, which is every Monday we post a new article about a skeptical topic. And the last one was about the myth about different ways of learning. So that's maybe not the first thing you think about as skeptics, but there is this myth. It's called the VARK, or VARK in English. So it's visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetic. Anyway, so the myth is that everybody has their preferred way of learning things. So you either learn through visual, meaning seeing things, or auditory, where by listening, or reading, or by doing things. And that is a myth. Even people who say that they prefer a certain way of learning, when you put them in a random situation and they can pick which way they want to learn something, they do not always pick their favorite, what they say is their favorite way of learning. The real science says that the best way of learning is to mix it all for everybody. Everybody should both read, hear, listen, look at, and practically do things. That's the best way of learning. So that was just an example. That was this Monday. But we have over, I think, 250 of these articles, and they are on the website. And the reason I'm talking so much about the website is that it actually translates to English very well. Swedish is one of the languages that Google Translate can handle pretty good. So I mean, it's like 97% correct, and you can the things that it gets wrong, you guess from the context what it is. So you're very welcome to go to vof.se and look at our list of articles there, because there's everything from homeopathy to UFOs to styles of learning, or anything you can imagine. 9/11 is there as well, for instance. We do have, also like the Finnish people, we have the 2 awards. We have, that I jokingly translate these awards a little bit, because they're hard to translate. So we have the Enlightener of the Year. Well, that's not so funny, actually. The Enlightener of the Year, somebody or some organization that has spread something very good during the year. So they get a prize. They got actually 50,000 Swedish kroner as an award, which is 4,500 euros roughly. So it's a little bit of money, actually. I should say we have over 2,000 members, paying members in the organization, and we also have about 120 subscribers to our magazine. So they're not members, but they pay the same amount of money. So that's where we get our money from. And so we have this prize that we can hand out to people who have done something very good, spread something very good. And then we have the other prize that I want to translate as the Confounderer of the Year, somebody who has done something to confound the public, to waylay the people about how things are working, spreaders of anti-vaccination, things like that. And they don't get any money. They only get the shame, right? So that's us. We also have our magazine. There's a little picture of it over there. It's a quarterly magazine. It's a small booklet, really. It's about 80 pages. It's pretty big, and it comes out every quarter. We have a great, now since last year, we have a great digital resource source as well for reading that magazine, and it goes back all the way since 1983, which was the first time we tried to publish anything. That was just a letter actually sent out to the members physically. That was how things worked in 1983. But it's all digitized now. It's searchable, and there are thousands of articles in there to read as well. So that's the Nordic scene, if you will. Any questions so far? You have to tell me if I speak too quickly. I don't want you to not understand what I'm saying, so just stop me anytime and say, hey, say that a little bit slower so I understand what you're saying. Yeah, that's okay. But, sometimes I get excited and then I speak very fast, and then sometimes I lose people. I hope I'm not losing you. So, right. So let's zoom out a little bit and look at Europe. So I mentioned that organization called.
Maybe you can just go back one slide, and you mentioned the number of members of your organization.
Yes.
How it differs from other organizations, and how you achieved that. What was the main tool to achieve that such a huge amount of members?
Yeah, well, okay, that's a good question. So when it started way back in 1982, it was just, I think, 10 people in a kitchen somewhere that they decided. This was at the Royal, what is called KTH, Royal Technical University of Stockholm. They were just young people there, very interested in saying, well, we have to stop people believing in stupid things. Basically, that's how it started. So that wasn't, it didn't start out as a big organization. Then it gradually grew so that eventually, and how they did that, I don't exactly know, I must say, because this was a little bit before my time. In the mid-90s, it had grown to close to, between 400 and 500 people, I believe, if we say roughly 1995. And then the internet happened. Remember that? And there was a big, I think we rode on that wave of on forums. Yes, we had a forum which unfortunately died a couple of years ago for technical reasons. We can't get it working again. But on the other hand, there are other ways of communicating online now, so maybe it's not. But yes, the forum was a big thing. It was really a big thing. And that took, so about, at the turn of the century, it had grown to like 800 or 900 members. And then it really took off. And 10, 12 years ago, we were close to 3,000 members. It was just every year it increased by a couple of hundred people. And that was very satisfying, of course. Unfortunately, nowadays, I think it's not so sexy to become a member of a big organization anymore. People used to go to these kind of organizations, also the humanists and others, to find a group to belong to and to exchange ideas with and things like that. But nowadays you can do that online without joining an organization. Organizations it's a little bit old-fashioned, I'm afraid. So I think that is why we have gradually lost a little bit of members in the last almost 10 years, I think, unfortunately. But we're working on it, and we still have enough that we can do a lot of good in the world. Did that answer the question? Great. So let's switch to Europe as a whole. ECSO is the European Council of Skeptical Organizations. So the Swedish Skeptics, VOF, is one of the founding members, but there are many founding members from Belgium, the UK, from France and Germany, and a few others. And that was started in 1994. And the purpose of that organization was to have people. This was before the internet, remember, 1994, just before the internet. So one wanted to duplicate what they did in the US, that SciCop did in the US, the big conferences where people can get together and discuss these things, because that's how you did it then. And so that is when the organization started. And the dark-colored countries on the map here are current members, or member states, I should say. We have 3 organizations in France, so that's why it's 14 members in the organization, but only 11 countries, because we have several in some. And then there are some light-colored countries where we also have close collaborations or association with them, but they are not formal members. We have a website. It's ECSO.org, exo.org. And the main thing still for this organization, where I was elected president last year, is to organize a congress every second year. And that congress is held in different cities, different countries every time, which is a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is, of course, that it circulates through Europe. The trouble with that, or the problem with that, is that you have to have some local knowledge to organize a good congress or conference. And that means that every country who does it, do it for the first time. And we at ECSO, we are sitting somewhere in cyberspace centrally trying to help them, of course, and assist them with certain things, financially and by suggesting speakers and guiding them. But people on the ground, you know, are always, it's the first time for them, always. So how do we go about, do we serve free coffee in the breaks? You know, things like that never becomes routine because it's always new for the people who are organizing it. But having said that, there is a picture there, a little bit, an image there, a little bit small, with very happy people from Lyon in France last year, where we were. It was a very good congress. And we have a new congress coming up in 2026. And I am currently in the middle of setting dates and venues, but it's going very, very well. And I think... Say the country. Are you recording this? I can't say the... Okay, I'll say the country. It will most likely be in the UK. And we are collaborating with some very, very experienced people. This time, I think we will... I believe we can get 350, 400 participants from all over, not just all over Europe. I think we will get international speakers and also participants as well. There's a few guys from Australia who always come, no matter what we do. That's really good. But so it's not just... the focus is Europe, but it isn't just for Europeans. Skepticism is an international endeavor. Everybody have the same problem in all the different countries and in all the world, especially with the internet. The same myths, the same misconceptions, the same frauds, the same scams, they turn up all over the place. So we don't really have to limit it geographically. So that's very interesting, and I will have an interesting talk with Algimantas tomorrow about maybe the Lithuanian skeptics should join ECSO as well at some point. We'll see. We can make a deal with you. Because we want to reach out to everybody. Romania is pretty new. They joined last year. So this organization, I would say, is actually growing a little bit, I think. We have a momentum now, and I hope we can become... what we want to do, not just to organize these congresses. This is traditionally what we've done over the decades. What I want to do as the president is to make sure that we really work as an umbrella organizations between these different countries, so that people get to know each other and exchange ideas, and can warn each other about coming scams, because even if all these scams usually end up being happening in all over the world, they start somewhere, and the quicker we know about them, the quicker we can start to debunk or go against them in some way. So that's very exciting. All right, so that was a lot of sort of a geography lesson, wasn't it? So let's go to look at some of the cases that has happened that I've been involved with, and you will probably recognize some of these, I think. Well, okay, first a little history lesson. What I feel and what I've seen is that we have worked our way in the skeptical movement. It started in the mid-70s, you can say, or late 70s, the modern skeptical movement, with James Randi and Carl Sagan and Isaac Asimov and a lot of those smart Americans that kick-started the whole thing, and then spread from there. But it has gone from being, you know, about UFOs and ghosts and witches and Uri Geller. Who remembers Uri Geller nowadays? He's still around. He's the guy who thought who claimed and still claims that he can bend spoons with just his mind, right? And it's just a magic trick. It's just anybody can do it if you learn how to do it. But you don't do it with your mind. You actually do it with your hands. You just do it like people can't see what's happening. He is still around, believe it or not. I think he must be close to 70 now. He was big in the 70s. And then he was a young man. Now he's probably 70 himself. And he still claims to... You remember there was not an oil tanker. It was a big freight ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal a couple of years ago. When that eventually managed to move again, it was stuck there for a couple of weeks, I think. It was a big thing. But when it managed to get free again, he claimed to have done it psychically from Israel, where he now has this base. He's from Israel. He's been touring the world a lot. But I think he's more or less settled down now in Israel. And you can see him there with his spoon and the very serious gaze that he looks into people, and that's part of the trick. I think you look at his eyes, so you don't see how he actually bends the spoon with his hands when you're not looking. Anyway, this is what the Skeptics movement was in the late 70s, early 80s, and when the Swedish Skeptics got going in 1982, that was very much the focus still. And over time, I think we have moved away a little bit from that, because that sort of, I wouldn't say totally harmless, but a bit silly things in a way. And one thing that happened early was that we started to focus on alternative medicine, so-called medicine. Do you know Edzard Ernst? Have you heard of him? German guy. He was trained as a homeopath. And then
the founder of the ideas of...
No, not the founder. No, that was Hahnemann. Yeah. No, Edzard Ernst is still alive, and he's a good guy now, because after studying and training to be a homeopath and a doctor for about 8 or 10 years, he realized this is all bogus. This is not working. This is just psychological tricks and misconceptions. So then he started as a homeopath and a doctor to teach that at the University of Vienna, where he was then. And that, of course, created a huge hullabaloo. And he then eventually moved to the UK and he was the first professor in alternative medicine at I can't remember now what the university was, but he was that. But he taught how it was fake. He had stopped believing in it because he had realized how it worked. Anyway, he doesn't call it alternative medicine. He called it so-called alternative medicine, scam. That's what he says. Okay. So that we moved quickly into scam. So there's my two friends over there to the left mixing a homeopathic remedy at a gathering we have there. It's a homeopathic champagne to help against headaches. So very good. But then more seriously, we got with 9/11, which I've mentioned already. With 9/11, I can say we had the start of the modern conspiracy theory. We had conspiracy theories all the time, even back in the French Revolution and the Illuminati and things like that. That went back several hundred years, probably as long ago as there has been humans. People have been seeing conspiracies where they're not real conspiracies. But with 9/11 something happened, and it was because of the internet, of course. It became easier to spread things very, very, very quickly. And since science and real investigations of what really happened to 9/11, for instance, takes time. It takes months to really sort out what's happening. But to spread a conspiracy or invent a conspiracy, you can do that in 5 minutes. And you can spread it very much. So when the actual real data comes in, like a 6 months later, nobody listens to that already because they've already listened to all the conspiracy theories. That was something new, and that is something that we skeptics have had to relate to ever since then. And it is a big problem because it's so much harder to prove that something is bogus or fake than to just invent something. We are sort of handicapped by wanting to be sure that we're telling the truth. The other side, if I may call it that, they don't have that restraint. They can just say whatever. And so we're always playing catch up with them. That is a newer thing. That didn't happen back in the 70s and the 80s. And then, of course, fake news. And I think that comes from, I don't know, I shouldn't pull that too much, but maybe that comes from the conspiracy, the new kind of conspiracy theories as well, because politicians learned that you don't have to prove what you're saying. You can just say something. It doesn't matter what you say. If you say it fast enough and often enough, people will believe you, even though you have just made it up. And then, of course, the other thing is that when Donald Trump, of course, comes to mind. When he was accused of using fake news, then he quickly realized that I can just call the real news fake, and then people will not know what's fake. Everybody's calling everything else fake, and there's no difference anymore between truth and fake news. And that is also something that we have to learn to adapt to, and it's very, very hard because, again, the fake news spreaders are not handicapped by having to verify what they're saying. They can just say whatever. And if they say it quickly enough and fast enough and enough times, people start to believe at least there's something in it, even though if they don't buy it hook, line, and sinker. And some do buy it. And that's different. So this is the past and maybe the present, and then also what's happening now I will come to a bit later. What I think is what we have to relate to and think about in the future, because we're not the world is always changing. We will not always be here. We will always move towards somewhere else. But I'd like to also say talk a little bit about what has been very important and still is very important in skeptical news, in the skeptical movement. Have been for 10 years or so, more actually, a couple of decades, and still is something that we're sort of losing the fight. And it's vaccinations, of course, anti-vaccination. So do you all recognize these people? Do anybody recognize one of them?
Yes, sure, but I don't recognize the two on the left.
The two on the left you don't recognize, okay.
And also Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yes, Robert Kennedy Jr. is there, that is correct. But if we go from left to right, the first one is Andrew Wakefield. Have you heard of him? Andrew Wakefield was a doctor. In 1998, I believe it was, he produced a study claiming to prove that vaccinations of children led to problems with the stomach, but more importantly, what's the word? Autism, thank you. Yes. So he claimed that vaccinations, specifically with the MMR vaccines, with the mumps, rubella, and what's the third one? There's two. Mumps, measles, and rubella. Yes. So the triple vaccine led to autism, and of course everybody panicked. Even other doctors said, "Oh, we have to look into this. This is very serious. If that is happening, we need to stop this, or we need to change our plans for how we administer vaccines." And serious doctors and researchers started to look into this. And for 10 years, they looked into this. And eventually, they had to find out, come to the conclusion that we cannot find such a connection. it doesn't seem to be a connection between the MMR vaccine and autism. But by then it was sort of too late, because for 10 years the public had heard from Andrew Wakefield that vaccines leads to autism. And he's still out there talking about that. But what happened eventually was that not just scientists looked into this and couldn't find a connection, but there's a guy called Brian Deere, who's not actually a scientist, he's a journalist, a UK journalist. He really dug into that and managed to get hold of the actual papers and the figures and the background material that Andrew Wakefield had used, and found and proved that it was all fake. He had made it up. He had made it up, and he was paid by lawyers. No offense to lawyers in the room, but he was paid by lawyers to try to prove this, and also he had a patent waiting for a single vaccination. So he was focusing on the triple vaccination, saying this is dangerous, but I have a single vaccination against measles that is not dangerous. And it is now well established that the whole study was fake, but the whole modern anti-vax movement was born now. And you can't, once that cat is out of the box, it's really, really, really hard to put it back in again. You can't do it. People still are very suspicious about vaccinations for no other reason than that there was one guy who faked a study. So the middle guy is Joseph Mercola. He's an American. He is probably the most successful peddler of anti-vax sentiments and supplements and stuff in the world. I think I don't know how much money he has, and I don't think anybody knows. He is making tons of money on selling what Edzard Ernst would call scam, and also propagating against vaccinations for some reasons, because he's selling vitamins instead or things like that. And then, as you said, we have Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who until a year ago was still viewed as a bit of a nutcase, a dangerous nutcase, but nobody really thought he would. Well, he was doing some harm in the world. He was. But now, well, you just have to read the papers. He's totally demolishing the American healthcare system, and with his total nonsense. But he's bought into all of this, and he's not a scientist. He's also, his background is a lawyer as well. But he is really, really dangerous, and this is a battle that we are sort of losing, I think, because we can see that on the vaccination rates all over the world. They are going down, even in Sweden, where I think we try to do a good job, and people typically do what they're told. I mean, they trust the government. We haven't had any revolutions in Sweden for several hundred years, so. Even if people don't really trust politicians, they trust the state and the government, and so if they say you should get vaccinated, most people do. But we do have anti-vaxxers in Sweden as well. We gave the Confounder of the Year award to a lady called Linda Karlström. There will be a spelling competition afterward in 2020, because she was spreading, especially, this was just before the pandemic had just started, but we didn't have any vaccines yet. But she was online telling everybody how the not yet existing vaccine would be very, very dangerous for you. So that tells you something. She told everybody that we don't have a vaccine yet, but when it comes, it will be very dangerous. And so she got the Confounder of the Year award in 2020. She became very, very upset. And in a way, we won that a little bit, because she lost a lot of her credibility, and she has been pretty quiet since. But we have to pick these guys out one by one, and they are coming up faster than we can really fight them, I think. So this is still a very big problem. You've all heard about the measles epidemic, or outbreaks, I should say, in Texas, for instance. This is something happening. Romania is terrible. I mean, there are tens of thousands of measles cases every year.
There are some numbers that in Lithuania, for most prominent diseases for children, numbers of vaccinated children are steadily dropping.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
I'm not surprised. Unfortunately, we're seeing this trend all over the place, and I blame partially these three guys for this. They're not alone, but they are really they are among the bad ones. So that's something we've been struggling with in Sweden as well, as I said. Another thing that is very Swedish, which you probably have heard of.
I just want to point another thing, maybe to not forget. Just go back one slide where all of us free anti-vaxxers are. There's actually a rumor. There's a parliament member now in Lithuania, which is, I would say, one of the two most prominent anti-vaxxer movement spokesmen.
Yeah.
Now in parliament. And there are some rumors that he's about to be put as a minister of healthcare here in Lithuania. I am definitely sure that he will not be, but there are some rumors just to check how the people are reacting, you know, if it will be a viable solution. Yeah. So
yeah.
So that would be total disaster too.
Yes. And I think similar things are happening in other countries. Unfortunately, the US is now leading the way on this. So, okay, so heading back to Sweden and also Estonia, but it was a lot about Sweden, and I don't know if you remember this when it happened. I guess people have heard of this, the MS Estonia disaster, when this ferry went down in the middle of the Baltic Sea in 1994. With almost 1,000 people on board. 852 people lost their lives. Most of them were Swedish. So this is nobody, I would say everybody in Sweden knows somebody who was either a relative of a friend or somebody who lost their lives in Estonia. And again, we can see, just like with 9/11, it takes a long time to really make a true good investigation, exactly what happened, what went down, what happened in what order, but spreading things online is very, very quick. So actually, I guess in 1994 it was a little bit early, but there for the internet to have that role. But since then, there have been a number of conspiracy theories about this. It is about the captain was actually murdered. No, the captain was sinking the ship deliberately because there were nuclear weapons on board. No, there was a transport of Russian military equipment, and somebody needed to hide that. All kinds of things like that. And unfortunately, in 2020 there was a Swedish new documentary, and that's the poster on the left hand side here. It was the find that changes everything. That's what it was called in Swedish, and it was a big success. I wouldn't be surprised if you can also see it here with the subtitles. It was a big success. It actually won a big award for being a good documentary. However, it was a terrible documentary because they deliberately, to make a good story, they only showed one side of the story. On one side of the story, they under the claim of just asking questions, they hinted at a lot of stuff. But the basis of it all was that Henrik Evertsson, that's another spelling exercise for you. That's a guy. And he's a journalist, and he, together with some divers, went down and filmed the wreck of Estonia on the bottom. It's on about 80 meters depth, so it's hard to get there, and more importantly, it's forbidden to get there. It's declared a sacred site because it's sort of a burial place for all these people who died there. So you cannot dive there. And he was eventually fined for doing that, but he did that, and he found the find that changes everything, that was in the title of the documentary, was a around 4 meter hole on the side of the ship, which had not been documented before, or at least he claimed so, and I think that was probably right. And he said, that is proof that something else happened. Because I don't know how familiar you are with the real story. The official story is that the visor that you see on the left-hand side or right-hand side there, which was picked up from the sea, that was broken off there was a storm, big waves and stuff, and that visor broke off, and it pulled with it part of the landing ramp or whatever you call that on the ship, where the vehicles go into the ship, and that opened up the ship, so all the water just came in, and then it sank very quickly. That's the official and a true story. But Everton, he said he found a new hole on the side of the ship, which had to be done by some nefarious thing, right? So they were talking about torpedoes, they were talking about submarines and things like that. And the most likely explanation for that hole is that the ship, when it went down, hit a rock at the bottom, and it was actually created at the bottom, this hole. That is the most likely explanation. But he didn't mention that at all, and he also said, well, it couldn't be that because it's a very soft bottom of the sea there. It's sand dunes, and it couldn't happen. That's not true. There's a big rock just a couple of meters from that hole. There's a big rock that it actually probably hit. But that of course reignited these rumors and conspiracy theories, and it's very, very hurtful. As I said, most Swedes have some sort of relation to this disaster, and now it for a few people at least, or for quite a few people, this opens up this wound again about having lost their relatives and their friends, and maybe there was something behind it that people are not telling us. And stuff. And so that was really, really bad. Henrik Evertsson, of course, got the Confounder of the Year award from the Swedish Skeptics. And I think we did a little bit of good. It made a bit of an impact, I think. There are some forums on Facebook and others, or groups on Facebook, where they're still discussing. And it seems like the people who still believe in the conspiracy it's a hardcore group, but they're not a majority of the people who are arguing online anymore. But that's a very, 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 very Swedish conspiracy theory area, I think. This is our Kennedy assassination or fake moon landing fake moon landing story, I think.
Killing of Olof Palme.
Yes, killing of Olof Palme is one as well. I thought of including that here, but it actually, in the Swedish culture, is not so much of a conspiracy theory anymore. People seem to be very, very much in agreement that it was very, very poorly very, very poor police investigation. That is the real scandal, really, because the police very early focused in on 1 or 2 tracks that seemed to be wrong, but they stopped listening to everything else. So when it was really people wanted to investigate it again from scratch, too much time had gone by. So we will probably never really know what happened to Olof Palme. But the police really, can I say a bad word? They fucked up, really, and I think everybody agrees on that. They were incompetence. It was incompetence more than conspiracy, I think. Probably it wasn't a big organization behind it, and that's just my guess. I shouldn't really be guessing, but I think that if it had been, we would probably know by now. But if it was just one lone nutcase who did this, and that person may no longer be alive, it's very, very hard to find that information today. Like, what is it, 40 years later? So, yeah, so that's one. Right, okay, I have two more things, but on that, but maybe I'll save it for last when, and because time is ticking, and there are a few slides more that I want to do, and I don't have slides for the other things. I can do them more or less without slides. So I talked a little bit. We used to talk about UFOs and witches and things like that, and we've moved on to conspiracy theories and anti-vaccination. But what is happening right now, and what are we struggling with right now, and we will probably have to struggle with for a long time? I think one is the political polarization, the politicization. I can't say that word, but you see what I hope you understand what I mean. Of everything, of science, of scientific or pseudoscientific claims, and also that people are not talking to each other anymore, as if they ever did. But I think that the distance has been exasperated by the internet. So you're either full on to the right or full on to the left, and there's nothing in between. There's no middle ground anymore that people can really reach each other. And that is a problem for us, because we do want to reach out to people that we think are misguided or have heard the wrong thing. But it is very, very hard, and that is something we have to learn how to do that and be better. Then woke versus anti-woke. I don't know how much that debate has been here in Lithuania, but it's mostly an American thing, but I think it's pretty international. So especially about gender identity, the issue of the question of trans people. Do trans people even exist?
The same conversations are taking place here in Lithuania. Maybe not at the same level as in US, as an example, but we have the same topics as elsewhere. Yeah, but maybe not the same amount of public discourse is happening, you know. We have the vibes, we have divisions, we have the talks, but not at the same level,
Yeah. Okay, so this is a very, very, very infected discussion. And it's cultural, but it's also scientific or pseudoscientific. But it also actually divides the skeptical movement. There are people in the skeptical movement who accuses each other for being either anti-woke or woke. And I think we can't even internally discuss this without becoming very, very emotional.
Yeah, I just want, because I think it's also important, I want to put, because like USA organization, Skeptical Inquirer, as I know, we had a lot of debates about gender, ideology, trans rights, LGBT rights, etc. And these were topics on which a lot of division appeared, and it's very prominent now, because a lot of skeptics always tend to be more liberal, more left-leaning, with some exceptions. But times changes, and that topic brought another dimensions to the skeptical community.
Yeah. So that is something. I don't have the solution to this, but I think that is something that we in the skeptical movement need to address head on and try to solve, so that we can have a civilized discussion, not calling each other names because it very, very easily becomes that, and we've seen that. And as soon as you take one position or the other, you actually go back to the political. You become accused of being an ultra-right person or an ultra-left person, instead of discussing what is actually the science between you have sexual preference, you have sex, and you have gender identity. These are 3 parameters. Can we talk about them in a civilized way without becoming, madmen? It seems like it's hard. I think the sexual preference, I think, is fairly accepted by most. It's fairly accepted. You can be homosexual, you can be bisexual, you can be heterosexual, you can have leanings. It's not a either or. You can have a spectrum of all those. I think that's fairly well accepted. Also, asexual, polyamorous, little bit more loaded, but that happens. That I think people mostly accept that. But then when you talk about sex as something else than a binary thing, and suggest that maybe it's bimodal, that there is a fluid thing there, that you are, there's the female and the male, but there is also, you're not always just female or just male. You can actually be on a spectrum. If somebody suggests that, then you're immediately called woke and an ultra-left liberal crazy person. I think, don't call people crazy persons. Very few people respond well to being called a crazy person. If you want to reach somebody, you'll have to engage them in a respectful way, even if you think that they are quite wrong. But if you want to get somewhere, you need to learn how to have patience and talk to them. And we should be, the skeptics movement should show the way here, but we're not at the moment.
I would disagree on that.
Uh-huh.
Disagree
on what?
Just a sec, because the microphone is loading up each time. I would disagree on that with you, because there are a lot of organizations, not a lot of, but most prominent organizations as Australians, UK and USA Skeptic and USA Skeptical Inquirer, with Free Inquiry. Lately, they posted quite a few articles on that, ranging from total denial to total acceptance and everything in between. So I wouldn't agree on you that those skeptical organizations are not talking about that or not going. So they started because they seen that this is the issue, and some organizations tended to avoid that question, to not get polarized. But now you are seeing those articles and those opinions being expressed. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, I agree that there are articles being printed, but what I'm challenging is the conversation respectful and civilized. I think in some cases is a lot of name calling and people excluding other people from certain areas because they cannot stand their point of view instead of discussing. So yeah. Yes. Microphone.
There is one case with Richard Dawkins, like he's make some arguments from biology against changing the sex, and he is, I think, it was taken the humanist award maybe from his for this, that he just takes some arguments like I think he had humanist,
there was a humanist organization in the US that he left because of, actually not something that he had said, But there was another article, and there was, and I don't think you should leave organization. You should stay. You should say and argue, but you should argue civilly. What's the word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think if I correctly remember that he had some nomination, like, and the organization just took that nomination from him. Like, I don't know. I just need to Google maybe, but
yeah.
It was, I think, the award of humanist or something like that.
Yeah, and that's
just taken because of the arguments, like.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I mean. That's not how we should do things, I think. But it requires everybody to sit down and really listen to each other, because that doesn't always happen. Anyway, it is a challenge, not just for the world, but also for the skeptics movement. The last thing here is the return of theocratic ideas. We see that illustrated here by Donald Trump selling Bibles. That's one thing, but we see it in many countries that there's there's a tendency to want to go back to religion and uncouple religion with strong leaders, and that's a sort of new trend. The trend have been the other way for a long time, and we have to meet that somehow. We have to be prepared to discuss that, and I would assume that most of us here in the room are not terribly religious, and I don't like the idea of religions being part of politics or how countries are run. Yes, so how much time do I have? Are you getting, have you had enough yet?
Let's finish it, and we can continue.
Yeah, we can continue. Right. Okay. So I was going to reflect a little bit my personal journey here, myself as a skeptic, and I think there's one thing that I'll come back to here, and that is we don't always reflect on why we feel that skepticism is a good thing. It's sort of something that most of us just take for granted. Of course, you need to be skeptical. Of course, you need to listen to science. Of course, you need to be rational. But I think if we look inside, if we do a little bit of soul search, there are many reasons to do this. And for my personal thing, I would, and that's different from person to person. There's no right or wrong here. But for me, I want to know how things work. I want to learn new things. That is what's driving me. I want to really know how things... So as far as it's possible, I know it's not possible to know everything, and there's always be a little bit of doubt, but I want to learn things. That's what's triggering me. Others can be driven by other things, I guess. Another thing, of course, is that you want to belong to a community. We are all humans, just like people gather in churches or gather in other what do you call it? In other ways, for other reasons. We also are social creatures, and we want to belong to a group where you feel at home, right? But that's also a little bit dangerous, because it's easy then to adopt your feelings and your opinions just to fit in, and that is something I think we should not be afraid of, but we should be aware of that. But if we get together in a community and find this sense of community, we can also do a lot of good in the world, I think. And I mean, if we individually try to save the world. Which I'm jokingly saying sometimes to my wife. Why are you so engaged in this? I'm trying to save the world, I'm saying. Okay, fine. But it's easier to do if you're more than one person, right? So it's a good thing for this community. But then when it comes, do we benefit society as a whole for being. Do the skeptics movement benefit society as a whole? I would like to think we are, but we need to think about the best way of doing that. It's all fine for us sitting here in a basement discussing among ourselves, but how do we reach out to? And also, I'm
Come on, Pontus, you have such a old organization. Do your research in Sweden. Do an actual research of an impact.
Yes, well, yes, but how do we best get that impact? And how do we convince people that it is better for the whole society if the healthcare system is based on science and not on belief systems? Because I truly believe that. I mean, a patient that is treated with the best that science can deliver will have a better chance of recovering than if you're treated by a homeopath or somebody who tries to heal you with crystals. In that way, we can make a difference, and we should make a difference, but we need to convince people out there that it actually is for the common good to let science take the lead. But people are sometimes afraid of science, and you're accused of being such a hardcore science nerd that you lose connection to softer values. And I really do believe that you can be an empathic person, a person who cares for other people, and be a skeptic at the same time. You can combine those two things. And I do actually like, I don't know if any of you follow the Skeptic UK magazine. They have a header on their website, and it says, "Reason with compassion." And that is actually a bit controversial, because a lot of skeptics, especially old-fashioned skeptics, they say, no, we don't care about compassion and ethics and morals. We're only in it for the science, exactly how things work. And if people get hurt by what we're saying, that's their problem. You know, that's a hardcore skeptic. I think we should not, of course, hide things to save people's, not hurt people's feelings. That's not what I'm saying. But it's not wrong to try to get a little bit compassion in there as well. Because if we are going to, you can do both. You can both be skeptical, scientifically minded, and care for people. And that is something that we have to learn. That's a pretty new thing, I think, in the skeptics movement. And not everybody accepts that, I think. But I think there's something in it. I'd like to try to do that.
Yes, possibly a new thing, but I would say that it came with more psychological research and neuroscientific research which came into the field, which gave new ways and approaches how to look at the same things which were earlier studied by hardcore scientific methods. Let's say some kind of paranormal things which skeptics were debunking based on hardcore physics or something like that. So this works this way. But now things are changing, and the same skeptics as me and the skeptics organization in Lithuania, I tend to look from sociological and psychological perspectives, and to ask questions why people are believing those things and why are they doing those things, not debunking actual thing what is happening, like the spoon bending. It doesn't matter how the spoon is being bent, it's why that person needs to bend that spoon in front of an audience to get that attention, What are the motivations behind that spoon bending? Yeah. So I think these are the questions which are It should be asked in skeptical.
Yes, and as you say, this can be studied scientifically as well. Not just how happy Uri Geller is when he can bend a spoon, but also why do people want to believe? That is, how are they getting tricked? What psychological phenomena is behind their, not just why they get fooled, but also why they very often like it. And that's interesting. That's interesting to know. But I think, let's go, because my last slide is a bit more of a question mark, really. Does everybody understand the phrase unstated premise? So it means something that we haven't really formulated or told ourselves, but it's still there, something we take for granted.
Like a common knowledge almost.
Yeah, well, it's something we take for granted without even acknowledging it, not even realizing it, we take it for granted. Because for a long time, I started, you have to go really way back in your mind and try to be a little bit a psychologist yourself. So why am I fascinated by skepticism? Why do I think it is important? Because for a long time I felt, well, of course it's better to be right than to be wrong. And I didn't reflect more than that. But why do I feel that? Of course, I can rationalize it. I can say that, well, if I am right in, let's take medical things, that's the obvious thing, healthcare things. If I know what I'm doing, it's better. I'm more likely to have a successful result. I can save this person's life if I do it the right way. I know what I'm doing. But that's not what I mean. That's an effect of that. But why am I fascinated by being correct? I don't have the answer, and maybe you are motivated by other things. I'm not sure, but I think we should. It's be very interesting to dig into that and think about that. Why do we think? Really, why are we so fascinated by science? We who are in this room.